Welcome everyone. I'm Paul Herman with CCLI. Here this morning with Chris and Anthony Hoisington of the brothers McClurg. Guys, great to have you.
Oh, great to be here.
So your brothers, tell me where McClurg came from.
So our parents in the 70s had a Southern gospel music group that traveled all over the country, but the ironic thing was they were Southern gospel from upstate New York, which is interesting. But so 70s, 80s, they toured all over the place, and they were called McClurg Family Singers. And so when it came time for us to name what we were doing in our ministry, our grandfather was the person in our lives, still is, who had modeled for us what it was to live a life of worship and being a worship leader himself. And so even though our last name is Hoisington, we decided to keep it going with keep the legacy of the music in that way. So Brothers McClurg came from that because we're brothers and McClurg.
Nice.
So.
Well, Chris, I have to ask about the hair. I'm sure you get asked about it all the time, but tell us about it.
Probably had it since I was 12. Just let it go and cut it here and there, but kind of just had it so long that I don't know what I would do. I'm 34 now, so if I cut it, it's like cutting a piece of your, my wife wouldn't recognize me, and that kind of
thing.
It's
like cutting off your arm.
Yeah.
Tell us about Old Bear Recording, Old Bear Studios. What you guys have going there?
So 3 or 4 years ago, we wanted to record a Christmas project, and we decided that instead of going maybe into a more conventional studio, we would take the money that we crowdfunded and raised to record some stuff on our own. So we bought all the gear, and we rented out a warehouse space. And we were actually our intention was to set it up, record the project, and then dismantle the whole thing and sell it off. And we just decided to keep it up. After we got done with the recording that Christmas project, we started having friends from all over the country call us and say, hey, before you dismantle it, can I come and record my thing there?
Wow.
And so here we are 3 years later. We're just recording projects pretty regularly, mostly from all over the United States. We don't do a whole lot of local stuff, but we do a lot of worship leaders and worship artists. Tends to be maybe a little left of center, I guess. But Old Bear, we feel like, is an expression of worship in the idea that God makes all of us unique, and so therefore the sound is going to be a little unique at times. And so that's kind of been our heart, and it's really been a really interesting season and mission for us. And so we're grateful to be a part of it.
That's great. Looks like one of your top songs now on Song Select that you've co-written is "Come to the Altar and Pray."
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so we wrote that song actually. I was on vacation in the Outer Banks, and I was just waking up in the morning, and I had all of these anxious thoughts just about things going on in my life at that time. And so I just started to list off of the things that I knew I needed to submit to God in prayer. So if it's comfort you need or compassion you seek, come to the altar and pray. If you're out on your own with no place to go, just started feeling, so it was like I wanted to feel loved, I was feeling lonely, and I had this thought in my head about just the old school evangelist thing that we grew up around all the time, which that felt like an altar call. It was like the pastor would basically list 25 things, hurts and hangups, and pretty much identify everybody in the room, and then say, "Come to the altar and pray." And so it felt like a throwback to the thing. And then we met a friend of ours who's on Old Bear named Ryan Clare out of Minnesota. A powerful voice, sounds like Americana Johnny Cash, something or other. And we were co-writing with him a little bit for his project. And so I submitted this song to him just because I felt like it fit his thing. And he took it and wrote a few other things around it. And so we kind of co-wrote that together with him and put it out about, 3 or 4 months ago. And so,
That's great.
Yeah.
Another song of yours called Alive is one that I actually use on my prayer walk, and it's a great walking and praying song. Tell us about that one.
That was, I think that was when we first met All Sons and Daughters and got in a writing room with those guys, and David Leonard had that verse going, and we just kind of chimed in with the Alive chorus. We all just kind of started unanimously singing it over and over. It's a very repetitive chorus,
Right.
you know.
I counted 10 of them.
Yeah. And I don't know. It was like one of those things where, you know, songs have a way of connecting artists that way when you can kind of get around something, you know. And then the extension of that into the church, and kind of, I mean, for us, when that song came out, was a real encouragement to our community in Buffalo, and just the stuff we were doing at the time and people we were around. And, you know, winters get long there, and people get, you know, called the dead and disappointed, and you know, so it just felt very appropriate, you know. And I love that that song kind of comes at you from a different way. Like I like when songs are like worship songs are almost slightly singer-songwriter in the verse, because it catches your ear, because it's not something you hear all the time. It's not a typical verse. Then the chorus is unanimous. It's something that everybody can kind of collectively get around. So that was kind of one of those songs that just there wasn't a lot of work put into it, and just kind of came out pretty fluently. And they immediately put it on their first EP, their first song of their first EP. And then we put it out on ours with like the bridge that's in there that they didn't put on theirs. And so it was cool, because kind of like two different versions. And I think it's been recorded a few other times now. I'm pretty certain. Yeah,
it's a great song.
Thank you.
Great song. Any final thoughts at all for our worship leaders and worship teams out there in our CCLI churches?
Well, we just love the idea of what CCLI does, and in the sense that it fosters this place of community for people, worship leaders across the world, to be able to come and access music. And so I've always felt, I think Chris and I have always felt like honored to be in the mix, because we know that what we do is sometimes a little unique and different, but there's room for all of us at the table. And so I often feel like whenever we get around and we talk about the church and music and everything like that, that the most encouraging thing that was ever told to me just by my dad is just like, son, just, you know, get up there and do what God has called you to do. Be yourself, and don't worry about the rest of it. You know, the Lord is going to take care of it. And so, you know, you may be watching or, you know, thinking about things like that in your life right now, and just the encouragement would be, I know it sounds really cliche and simple, but to just walk in the giftings that God has given to you specifically, lead from that place. Don't try to add too many things to your formula that God has given you, and be okay with that. God is going to take care of you when you're yourself, and you know, and we know that we're pretty quirky, so it's fun, you know, but it's good. But thank you for everything you do, and
totally.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Take care.